The first step in creating an ant hair simulation is to prepare the model. And here, of course, we've got a character and we want to apply hair onto that character's scalp. Now, we could paint hair follicles or we could select individual faces from which the hair would then grow. However, it turns out that it's just actually better to make a duplicate object that only represents the scalp, and that will act as an emitter that will cause the hair to grow outward. And we do this for a number of reasons, primarily because if we have a separate scalp emitter object, then we can easily and automatically distribute follicles across that surface, including passive follicles, which calculate more quickly. I'll begin by hiding the other objects here. I've got them on display layers already. I'll hide the eyes and the robe. And I'll select the character's head mesh and make a duplicate. Edit, duplicate. You can also use the Control-D shortcut. And now I've got head mesh 1. I'll go ahead and rename that, and I'll call it scalp emitter. And I want to place that onto its own layer. With it still selected, I'll go to the display layers and click the button that says create a new layer and assign selected objects. Now I've got layer 1, and I'll double click on that, and I'll rename this layer to scalp emitter layer. Now I'll hide the original head. And what I want to do is select all the faces that are not going to be part of the scalp. And I'll probably want to do that in the side view. Tap the space bar, go to the side view. And using any selection technique you want, you can go ahead and just select everything that's not going to be part of the scalp and then just delete it. You can use the lasso tool for that. I'll right click and go into face selection mode. And I'm just going to select everything that I want to be deleted, including the ear. And you might need to take a few stabs at that to get it right. Of course, you can use the Control key to remove faces from a selection. I've tapped the spacebar and gone out to the perspective view, and I want to check the selection that I've made before I do anything drastic. And I've selected everything that is not going to be part of the scalp. And with all those faces selected, I'll simply press the Delete key on the keyboard. And now I've got a scalp object. I want to make sure there's nothing else left behind. If we want to, we can go around and clean up some of these little topology glitches here and there. I'll leave that for you to do on your own. The one thing that we do want to make sure that we do is to move all these faces either inward or outward so that they are not exactly coincident with the main mesh surface. I want to go ahead and unhide that head layer so we can see it. And you can see right now that the faces on the scalp are exactly coincident. And we want to move those slightly outward or slightly inward so that they're not exactly on the same surface. And that way we won't need to worry so much about whether the faces are visible or anything like that. So what I'll do is I'll just select them all. And then I can use the transform component tool to move them slightly into the head. Use the edit mesh menu to do that. Edit mesh, transform component. And then move it inward just ever so slightly so that it's inside that other surface. We can toggle the head layer a couple times to make sure. Or we can go into wireframe mode with the 4 key and just check to make sure we haven't moved that in too far. All right, very good. Hit the 5 key, go back to a shaded view. And also right click and go into object mode to make sure that we've got the mode set correctly. And finally, we'll hide that head layer once again. And like I said earlier, we could clean up some of these little topology glitches here if those bother us, but I'm going to leave that for an exercise for you to do on your own. Last things we'll want to do is to delete the construction history, select the object, edit, delete by type history, and just for convenience, I want to move the pivot to the center of the object. And to do that, we'll go to Modify, Center Pivot, and then select the Move tool so we can see, in fact, that the pivot point is in the center of that scalp object.